He was Hollywood's golden boy, but his real life was a storm of secrets. Mickey Rooney had it all: fame, money, and star power. But behind the charm? Affairs with underage starlets, mob connections, violent outbursts, a wife murdered in his own home, and betrayal by his own family. Some of these stories were buried for decades. Others were just too disturbing to print. This is the Mickey Rooney the studios didn't want you to know. Number 1. 8 wives, 9 children, and a lifetime of turmoil. Mickey Rooney's personal life was a whirlwind of romance, betrayal, and tragedy. Born in 1920, he was thrust into entertainment before he could talk and remained in the spotlight for nearly 90 years. But off-screen, his life was anything but charming. He married 8 times, beginning with Ava Gardner in 1942. The marriage ended within a year due to Rooney's notorious infidelity and gambling. Other wives included Betty Jane Reyes, Martha Vickers, and Barbara Ann Thomason, who was murdered in 1966 by her lover Milos Milosevic, in a case that rocked Hollywood. He fathered 9 children, some of whom would later accuse him of emotional abandonment or financial neglect. His son Mickey Rooney Jr. battled addiction and estrangement. By the end of his life, Rooney confessed to deep regrets: "I lived like a king but was a lousy husband and a worse father." Despite the image of America's sweetheart, Rooney's family life was filled with heartbreak and dysfunction. Number 2. Abused by his own family in his final years. In one of the most heartbreaking and shocking turns, Mickey Rooney revealed late in life that he was abused by his own stepson, Christopher Aber, and his wife Christina. In 2011, at the age of 90, Rooney testified before Congress that he had been the victim of elder abuse, denied food and medication, financially exploited, and emotionally tormented. "They held me hostage in my own home," Rooney said in a written statement. The abuse included allegedly stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from him. A restraining order was filed against Aber, who was also accused of threatening Rooney and controlling his every move. Rooney's estate, which had once been worth millions, had been drained to almost nothing. This shocking revelation cast a dark shadow over his final years and ignited national conversations about elder abuse in Hollywood and beyond. Despite a career that earned over $20 million, Rooney died with just $18,000 in his bank account. Number 3. Affairs with teenage starlets and studio cover UPS. During the golden age of MGM, Mickey Rooney developed a reputation for pursuing teenage actresses, many of whom were underage. Multiple rumors and accounts suggest that the studio frequently covered up his affairs to protect his image. A particularly persistent rumor claims that Rooney had a secret relationship with a then 15-year-old Elizabeth Taylor, though this was never publicly confirmed. Studio insiders claimed that MGM would assign employees to manage his girl problem. He allegedly had brief affairs with Lana Turner, Norma Jean Baker, later Marilyn Monroe, and Judy Garland, all while still very young. One studio executive was quoted saying, "It took 3 handlers just to keep Mickey away from the girls." In an era where studios controlled the press, many of these scandals were buried. But as former employees and confidants began to speak out in later decades, the stories gained traction. Biographer Jane Ellen Wayne even wrote, "He could charm a girl out of her shoes and her future in 30 seconds flat." Number 4. The murder of his wife in a Hollywood love triangle. In one of Hollywood's darkest real-life tragedies, Mickey Rooney's 5th wife, Barbara Ann Thomason, also known as Carolyn Mitchell, was murdered in 1966 by her lover, Yugoslav actor Milos Milosevic, in Rooney's own home. Thomason had been involved with Milosevic while still married to Rooney, though they were separated at the time. In a jealous rage, Milosevic shot her in the head and then turned the gun on himself. The murder-suicide took place in Rooney's Brentwood home, and the scandal dominated tabloids for weeks. The couple had 4 children, all of whom were caught in the aftermath of the gruesome event. Rooney had reportedly warned her to stay away from Milosevic, calling him unstable, but she ignored his pleas. After the tragedy, Rooney was left to raise the children, and the trauma would haunt him for years. "It destroyed a part of him," said a family friend. Despite his many scandals, this tragedy marked one of the lowest and most horrifying chapters of his life. Number 5. Financial ruin despite earning millions. Despite being one of the highest paid actors of the 1940s, Mickey Rooney died virtually broke. At the height of his career, he was earning over $12,000 a week, the equivalent of over $200,000 today, and starred in more than 300 films. Yet through a combination of gambling addiction, bad investments, and alleged theft by family and advisors, Rooney lost nearly everything. Rooney admitted to gambling away millions at racetracks and in casinos. "I didn't just bet the horses, I bought the stable," he joked in later years. His financial mismanagement was so severe that by 1962, he filed for bankruptcy, listing debts over $500,000. He would go on to declare bankruptcy again in the 1990s and died in 2014 with barely enough to cover his funeral. He was forced to work into his 90s just to pay rent, accepting bit roles and cameos for as little as $500. A tragic end for a man who once symbolized the American dream. Number 6. Clashes with Judy Garland and alleged pregnancy scandal. Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland were paired in over 10 films and were hailed as the all-American screen duo, but behind the scenes, their relationship was turbulent. Garland reportedly harbored deep feelings for Rooney, but he treated her with indifference or cruelty. Rumors circulated that Garland became pregnant by Rooney in the late 1930s, and that Louis B. Mayer ordered her to have an abortion to protect Rooney's image and MGM's profits. While no hard evidence ever surfaced, multiple biographers and former MGM insiders have claimed the story was true. Judy Garland's personal life was marred by depression and drug use, much of which began under the intense control of MGM executives. She once said, "We were treated like property." And Mickey, he was their golden boy. In later years, Rooney denied any involvement in such decisions, but his comments toward Garland often seemed dismissive. Their on-screen chemistry masked a deeply unequal and, by some accounts, emotionally damaging relationship. Number 7. Rumored mob ties and gambling debts. Mickey Rooney's well-known love of gambling led to persistent rumors that he had ties to organized crime. In the 1950s and 60s, it was widely reported that Rooney owed large sums to Las Vegas bookies and may have turned to mob-connected figures for help. According to several Hollywood insiders, Rooney once borrowed over $250,000 from a shadowy figure with ties to the Chicago outfit, prompting rumors that he had to do favors for underworld characters to erase his debts. He was also allegedly beaten in a Vegas hotel room in the late 1960s as a warning to repay his gambling obligations. While never confirmed, these rumors were serious enough that Rooney was blacklisted from certain Vegas casinos and eventually sought financial protection from studios to shield him from creditors. He couldn't stop betting, a former agent said. He would bet on 2 flies crawling up a wall. Number 8. Feuds and physical fights on set. Despite his small stature, just 5 feet 2 inches, Rooney had a volcanic temper. He was known for exploding on directors, producers, and co-stars. On the set of Breakfast at Tiffany's, 1961, his portrayal of Mr. Yunioshi, a now widely condemned caricature of a Japanese man, was offensive even then. But Rooney reportedly refused to listen to criticism, calling detractors overly sensitive. He allegedly punched a director on the set of a 1970s television show after being asked to redo a scene. Co-stars have described him as charming one minute and monstrous the next. Actress Margaret O'Brien once said, "Mickey could be sweet and then switch into a rage. You never knew which one was walking into the room." His outbursts hurt his career in the 1960s and 70s, when younger directors began to avoid working with him. Still, Rooney rarely apologized, saying, "I've earned the right to blow my stack. I've been in this business longer than most of them have been alive." Number 9. Accusations of racism and misogyny. Over the decades, Rooney was frequently accused of racist and sexist behavior, both on and off the set. His infamous role in Breakfast at Tiffany's was only one example. Though the role was written by Truman Capote and directed by Blake Edwards, Rooney's over-the-top performance as the bucktooth Mr. Yunioshi drew intense backlash even in the early 1960s. Rooney, however, defended the performance, claiming critics just didn't get the joke. In private, several actresses said he made lewd and sexist comments, especially to young women. According to Shirley Jones's memoir, Rooney made aggressive advances toward her during filming. He thought it was his right, she wrote. He was a legend, and he acted like the rules didn't apply. Though Rooney was never formally accused or charged, his name often appeared in conversations about old Hollywood's worst behavior. Number 10. A bitter family feud over his body after death. Even death couldn't end Mickey Rooney's family drama. After he died on April 6, 2014, at age 93, a bitter legal dispute erupted over where he should be buried and who had the right to his remains. Despite being married to Jan Chamberlain at the time, Rooney had separated from her years earlier and amended his will to leave her nothing. His estate, which amounted to less than $20,000, was left to his stepson Mark Rooney, with whom he had been living in his final years. Jan and other family members contested the will, and there was a prolonged fight over his funeral and burial location. At one point, his body was held in a morgue for weeks while the feud played out. Eventually, he was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, but the acrimony over his death further tarnished the legacy of a man who had once been the most famous actor in the world.